What if an unassuming moment of neglect hides a tragedy so profound that it redefines the meaning of abandonment? On one ordinary afternoon in 2023, while most families prepared for a break, one decision would echo through time and shatter lives. Imagine a home filled with the innocent laughter of a 16-month-old toddler, a place that should have been safe and warm. But then, a mother's ill-fated decision to take a vacation without ensuring proper care transforms that sanctuary into a stage for unimaginable neglect. For 10 agonizing days, Jailyn Candelario was left completely unsupervised, her quiet cries drowned out by silence as the passage of time turned hope into despair. The tragedy that unfolded was not just a lapse of parental care. It was a calculated failure that unleashed a tide of devastation. As emergency responders eventually breached the quiet of the abandoned home, they discovered a scene so surreal. A child, once full of life, now reduced to a lifeless shadow by dehydration and starvation. This heart-wrenching reality not only stunned investigators, but also began to unravel a chain of events that exposed deep systemic flaws. Could you imagine that an ordinary vacation plan, executed without a second thought, could ultimately lead to a child's silent suffering that echoes for generations?
Welcome to Crime Bite.
In this channel, we peel back the layers of those hidden realities, raw evidence, conflicting testimonies, and emotional pleas for help that too often come too late. By looking into these crime bites, you'll see firsthand how broken trust, systemic oversights, and chilling motives can converge into stories that rattle us to the core. If you find this exploration as vital as we do, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notifications button. Together, we can shine a light on the cases that demand attention, ensuring every voice, especially the silenced, finds the audience it deserves. In the summer of 2023, a quiet suburban neighborhood was shaken by an act of unforgivable neglect that defied parental duty. While many families eagerly anticipated their own vacations, one mother's ill-conceived decision led to an unimaginable tragedy, a decision that would not only rob a child of her innocence, but also forever alter the lives of those left behind. Late one afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, the mother departed on a vacation without making any adequate arrangements for the care of her 16-month-old daughter, Jailyn Candelario. With travel plans set and excitement in the air, she left behind a silence that, unbeknownst to her, would soon speak volumes. The home, once filled with the gentle hum of lullabies and the soft coos of a child, descended into an eerie quiet. Days passed without a single call for help, a haunting isolation that would eventually turn into a nightmare of starvation, dehydration, and neglect. How could a simple vacation planning turn into a tragedy that defies all notions of care and responsibility? As hours turned into days, the once gently cooing sounds of Jailyn's laughter were replaced by a desolate, haunting silence. Friends and neighbors began to notice that something was amiss when the usual cheerful energy of the household turned into an unsettling void. Early on, there were vague reports, whispers at a neighbor's door, hesitance in routine conversations, that all was not right. Yet no one could have imagined the extent of the silence. In a home designed for warmth and family, a single crib sat in a corner, bathed in the soft glow of a fading nightlight. But that crib, which once cradled the joyful expressions of a loving toddler, had become the final witness to a prolonged period of utter neglect. As the community slowly learned of the tragedy, disbelief mingled with sorrow. How could a tender life slip away unnoticed? When the quiet of a home becomes deafening, how many silent cries for help go unheeded before tragedy strikes? The grim reality came crashing down when authorities finally discovered the unthinkable. After 10 agonizing days of isolation, emergency services were alerted to the unresponsive state of Jailyn. First responders, arriving amidst a mix of urgency and disbelief, encountered a scene that would haunt them forever. In a modest apartment now transformed into a somber shrine, paramedics found a 16-month-old toddler, her tiny body ravaged by severe dehydration and neglect. Her fragile skin, once soft and smooth, was marred by the telltale signs of starvation, pale, dry, and painfully brittle. In that heart-wrenching moment, hope that could have been salvaged was already extinguished. The silence that had enveloped the home was suddenly replaced by the cacophony of sirens and the hushed murmurs of investigators. Could a 10-day period of deafening silence be the final barrier between life and death for one innocent soul? In the aftermath of the discovery, investigators began to piece together the series of events that led to such overwhelming neglect. Early reports suggested that the mother had left for a vacation, a decision that was supposed to be temporary, a short respite that could be managed with arrangements for daycare or relative care. However, it soon became clear that no such arrangements had been made. The phone was never answered, and no alarm was raised by those who should have been paying closer attention. A labyrinth of unanswered questions began to form. Why was the child left unsupervised for so long? Was it a case of pure negligence or something more calculated? Interviews with neighbors and friends started to reveal disturbing patterns. Vague recollections of the mother's nonchalance about leaving her child alone, and a family environment where warnings were overlooked or dismissed as minor oversights. As the investigation unfolded, one fact became impossible to ignore. The tragic outcome was not merely an accident, but a systemic failure of protection that cost a young life dearly. How many small warnings must accumulate before the silence screams for attention? News of the tragedy spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of public outcry and deep-seated disbelief. Media outlets across the country reported on the case with a mix of horror and outrage. Social media exploded with hashtags and heated discussions. Never again, child protection, and justice for Jailyn became rallying cries for citizens demanding answers. The scandal forced a national conversation about parental responsibility, the perils of neglect, and the vulnerabilities of our child protection systems. Communities far and wide could barely comprehend how a mother, entrusted with the most sacred duty of nurturing her child, could vanish in plain sight and leave her toddler to suffer alone for 10 long days. In a society that prides itself on safeguarding the most vulnerable, this case highlighted profound failures that demanded accountability. In the midst of collective shock, can our society truly learn from a tragedy where time was the enemy and silence was the ultimate betrayal? As details of the case emerged, the focus shifted to the mother's fateful decision, a choice that would become the fulcrum of public anger and legal scrutiny. Further investigation revealed that the mother had not merely taken a brief vacation, but had abandoned her child without any provision for care. It wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment, but a prolonged negligence that led to the gradual deterioration of a toddler's life. Court records and interviews uncovered that she had spent her vacation far away, leaving her young daughter in an unattended home without even a contact number for emergency assistance. What might have seemed like a carelessness to some revealed itself as a deliberate act, one that has forced society to confront the disturbing question: what kind of person leaves a helpless child for days in such peril? When a person's absence turns deadly, can we ever truly understand the depths of neglect, or does that silence speak for itself? The resurgence of evidence and the public's demand for justice propelled the case into the legal spotlight. Investigators and prosecutors worked tirelessly to reconstruct the timeline and gather every shred of evidence, from forensic reports to eyewitness testimonies, ensuring that nothing would be overlooked. Advanced techniques in digital forensics were employed to analyze old communications and records, casting new light on events that had once been dismissed as mere accident. Courtroom drama unfolded as legal experts debated the extent of responsibility and negligence. The prosecution argued that the mother's decision to leave her child unattended for 10 days was not only inexcusable, but amounted to criminal neglect, resulting in death. Defense attorneys, on the other hand, attempted to downplay her actions, citing external factors and personal turmoil. Yet, the accumulating evidence painted a picture that was too grim to dispute. The case became a symbol of how the passage of time does not diminish the weight of inhumanity. In this legal battleground, the stakes are not merely a sentence, but the affirmation that every life must be protected at all costs. Can justice truly prevail when the echoes of the past demand to be heard in today's courtrooms? After a long, arduous trial that spanned months of emotional testimony and hard-fought legal battles, the verdict finally came. In a charged courtroom filled with reporters, family members, and a community waiting with bated breath, the jury delivered its decision. The mother was found guilty of severe child neglect, resulting in death, a verdict that resonated deeply with a nation that could not accept the loss of such an innocent life. The shocking courtroom announcement sparked a wave of both relief and sorrow throughout the community. People who had long demanded accountability finally saw a glimmer of justice being served. Yet the pain of losing a young child and the lingering questions about systematic failures could not be so easily soothed. As the gavel struck, affirming the verdict, it echoed a promise that such tragic failures of care would not be tolerated. But with every closing remark, the community was left to ponder whether the price of delayed justice could ever truly heal the deep wound of lost innocence. Does a long-awaited verdict truly mend the broken promises of the past, or does it leave us with a lingering sense of what could have been saved? In the weeks and months that followed the verdict, the shockwaves of this case rippled across the nation. Legislators, child welfare advocates, and community leaders joined forces to push for reforms that would ensure no child would ever face such abandonment again. The harrowing case of Jailyn Candelario prompted widespread calls to bolster emergency systems, enhance parental monitoring, and improve the protocols for intervening in suspected cases of neglect. Media outlets and social media platforms buzzed with intense discussions. Experts debated how modern technology and stricter laws could work hand in hand to protect the most vulnerable. Public forums were held where survivors, experts, and families shared their experiences, rallying support for improved child protection policies. The message was clear: no more silent tragedies, no more cases left to rot in the shadows of bureaucratic failure. Yet as the community mobilized for change, one critical question remained: how many more lives would have to be lost before systemic reform could prevent another tragedy of this magnitude? Could the heartbreak of the past serve as a catalyst for a future where such negligence is unthinkable? Is it possible for a society to truly learn from its most painful mistakes and establish safeguards that never again allow for a child's silent suffering? In the final analysis, the case of Jailyn Candelario transcends mere legal proceedings. It stands as a powerful reminder that every neglected cry for help echoes far beyond individual lives, impacting entire communities and, ultimately, the future of our society. Her tragic story is now a clarion call for a renewed commitment to protecting our most vulnerable among us and ensuring that negligence is met with swift and decisive action. The lessons learned from this harrowing case should not be confined to the dusty pages of a reopened file. They must spur us all into action. Parents, caregivers, neighbors, and authorities alike bear the responsibility to heed every warning sign, however faint, and to act before silence claims another innocent voice. Before we close this chapter, we invite you to take part in the movement for lasting change. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the notifications button so that you stay informed about future investigations and critical updates on reform efforts. Our heartfelt thanks go to our dedicated subscribers. Your support helps ensure that the voices of those who can't speak for themselves are heard, and that every silent cry is answered. Will you join us in making sure that no child's suffering is ignored again, transforming tragedy into a powerful catalyst for change?